Stumbling on Happiness and Shutter Island by Michael Paterniak. Stumbling on Happiness. To summarize the book, it was a scientific study on the psychology of why people have trouble estimating the future while also having trouble remembering the past. We forget why and how we make ourselves happy. So, as people, we imagine things of our future and past, and in certain cases, it can make us happy or sad or emotional. I think this is an interesting way to look at happiness, considering how people use their imagination to try and make predictions of their future with it, usually being inaccurate, which could potentially upset the person. This study was also to see how people do the same, but with the past memories, to see inaccuracies would change the person's emotion or bias. Continued, the book was written by Dan Gilbert. He is a psychologist and a professor of psychology at Harvard. He also has many awards under his belt. The book that I'm talking about, Stumbling on Happiness, was on the New York Times bestseller for about 6 months. And he does a lot of TED Talks and other internet things to help people with their daily lives, especially with social media and like just daily tasks. It shows that he's a very educated person, especially with him coming from being a professor of Harvard. And he likes to help as many people as he can find peace with different things. Some quotes from the book. Our brain accepts what the eyes see, and our eyes look for whatever our brains want. Perhaps the strangest thing about this illusion of control is not that it happens, but it seems to confer many of the psychological benefits of genuine control. In fact, the one group of people who seem genuinely immune to this illusion are the clinically depressed, who tend to estimate accurately the degree to which they can control events in most situations. And then the last one is the human being is the only animal that thinks about the future. Shutter Island. This book doesn't have a lot to do with happiness, but I think it could be a good fit with the scientific book I chose. So, throughout the book, the main character visits a mental hospital where there was a murder. He is a U.S. Marshal that is going to the island to investigate the crime to figure out who committed the murder. Throughout, the character has strange and creepy encounters with the people on the island and is terrified throughout the book. He has interviews with some of the patients, and they act weird and they talk to him like they know him. Just one example. But by the end of the book is what I want to focus on. If you've never read the book or watched the movie, there is a big twist at the end. He has a complete mental break, and he thinks that all the workers, the doctors, and the patients are out to get him. But he finds out that he's been a patient this whole time, and the Marshal is just a persona that he has continued with over a long period of time. And at the end, he relapses back to the persona after he comes out of it, which means he will be sentenced to a lobotomy. And he makes this persona up because of the tragedy that happened to him before he came to the island for treatment. The book was written by Dennis Lehane. He's an American author that wrote many books and also made some TV shows as a producer and a writer. He does a lot of crime fiction novels that are full of mysteries, especially this one. He's a very popular author, and and he has written many good books with lots of twists and turns. I remember the first time I read the book and I was surprised at the ending. It was a very emotional and sad ending to a book that seemed more like a thriller than a drama. Some of the quotes from the book: the brain controls pain. The brain controls pain. It controls fear, sleep, empathy, hunger. Everything we associate with the heart or the soul or the nervous system is actually controlled by the brain. Everything. What if you can control it? Another quote: everyone sees different things. Uh, and the last quote: if you are deemed insane, then all actions that would otherwise prove you are not do and actually fall into the framework of an insane person's actions. Your silent protests constitute denial, your valid fears or considered paranoia, your survival instincts are labeled defense mechanisms. It's no win situation, it's a death penalty. It's a death penalty really. Comparing the two books. So these books on the surface may seem very different, and they are very different, but I think they really do line up, especially at the end of Shutter Island. It examines someone going through so much pain and sadness that they pretend to be someone else entirely and live their old life before they even got to the asylum. He couldn't tell what was real or what was the past or future at the time, because of what had happened. He he killed his wife because his wife killed their children in the book and in the movie. Um, whereas the scientific book has a lot more positive outlook on the topic of people struggling with imagining the future or figuring out the past and how it makes them feel. The book looks more into the brain to see why people do certain things and why we might respond to something in different ways so that it might make the person more happy. Just like the main character using a coping mechanism to be happy or just to put his mind at some ease while the people at the hospital were just desperately trying to help him out so that he wouldn't have the lobotomy. These two books also take a deep dive into people's brains and how they work in different situations. I feel like they talk about the daily lives of people and how they feel well when experiencing these different situations. While the other is doing this, but because of what while the other is doing this, but because of what happens and help a man troubled by his own life choices. People make illusions in their own mind to ease their day, whether it be a different personality or as simple as wanting to go home when you are at work. In Shutter Island, the main character has trouble with his reality so he ends up going back to his other personality because he still feels guilty for his actions. Conclusions. My final thoughts on these two books is that they both want to help people move forward and try to help people have a better understanding of why they are feeling happiness on some level or sadness on some level from the activity they remember. I think remembering things and imagining things can help people understand how and why they feel different ways. The psychology of both are very interesting because people in stumbling on happiness are dealing with not so heavy emotions and situations. Just people doing things daily or normally in their life to potentially make themselves happier and potentially other people as well. Here's my works cited. The first two are the books, and the second two are some information I got on the authors.